Hey guys, tonight let's do something very calm, very dusty, and extremely beige in the best possible way. Go ahead and dim the lights, maybe lower the volume just a little too much. This is one of those stories where nothing explodes, nobody conquers half the world, and absolutely no one invents democracy. Instead, we're drifting gently into the life of a completely ordinary person, the kind history usually ignores, which is rude, honestly. Tonight, we're spending a slow, uneventful, deeply repetitive day with an ancient Egyptian farmer. No crowns, no curses, no mummies jumping out of sarcophagi, just mud, sweat, bureaucracy, and the Nile doing whatever it feels like this year. Settle in. This is the sound of history quietly breathing. The day begins long before the sun makes any dramatic appearance. In ancient Egypt, mornings were not eased in gently with alarms or snooze buttons. They arrived when the world decided it was time. And the world usually decided that time was inconvenient. Our farmer wakes in a small mud brick house, low to the ground, built thick to keep out heat that will absolutely arrive later whether anyone asked for it or not. The house smells faintly of straw, clay, and yesterday's bread, because of course it does. Furniture is minimal. There's no concept of decor beyond this keeps the roof from falling in. The bed is a raised platform, sometimes just woven reeds stretched over a frame. Soft is not the goal here. Surviving is. Our farmer stretches slowly, bones already tired even though the day hasn't technically started. He's not old by modern standards, maybe mid-30s, which in ancient Egypt is the age where everyone politely agrees one has seen enough. He slips into a simple linen kilt, light-colored, because darker colors would absorb heat and that would be a terrible personal choice. Outside, the village is quiet, not silent. There's always something. A goat making complaints, a neighbor coughing like that's his full-time profession. Somewhere, a baby has decided now is the correct time to scream at existence. The sky is pale. The Nile is nearby, calm, reflecting faint stars that haven't gotten the memo to leave yet. Before food, before work, there's a pause, a moment, a short prayer, not dramatic, just practical. Please let the river behave. Please let the crops grow. Please let the tax collector forget this village exists. Standard wishes. Breakfast is simple, flat bread, dense, chewy, made from emmer wheat that has been ground with stone tools, which means it definitely contains sand. Everyone's teeth are slowly losing a lifelong argument with bread, and bread is winning. There might be beer, not celebratory beer, breakfast beer. Thin, cloudy, mildly alcoholic, and safer than most water. This is not indulgence. This is hydration with ambition. The farmer eats calmly. No rush. The day is long. Rushing only makes it longer. Soon, it's time to head out. Tools are gathered. A wooden plow, a sickle with stone blades. Everything is simple. Repaired endlessly. Passed down, fixed again, and never thrown away, because throwing things away is a luxury for future civilizations. The fields stretch out toward the Nile. The river is everything. It floods when it feels generous. It recedes when it feels done. The entire agricultural calendar revolves around its moods. When it floods properly, life is good. When it doesn't, everyone starts quietly panicking in a very polite way. Right now, the soil is dark and damp. Perfect. The farmer steps into the field barefoot. Shoes exist, but they're annoying, and the mud is cool. There's a rhythm to this work, plowing in long lines, turning soil that's been enriched by floodwater. Oxen move slowly, unimpressed by human schedules. No one rushes an ox. That's how one gets judged by the universe. As the sun rises higher, the heat settles in. Not suddenly, it creeps, a gentle reminder that Egypt does not care about comfort. Sweat forms. Linen helps, but only so much. The farmer works steadily. This is not heroic labor, it's routine. The same motions performed yesterday, and the day before that, and last year, and probably by his father and his father before him. Mid-morning there's a break, not because rest is valued, but because heat is real. He drinks more beer, eats a few dates, maybe some onions. Breath remains terrible, but no one is judging. Everyone smells like effort and sun. Other farmers are nearby. Conversation is minimal. A few comments about the river, a shared complaint about taxes. Someone mentions that the scribe was seen last week. Everyone collectively sighs. Scribes are educated, which means they can read, which means they can count, which means trouble. Work resumes. Seeds are scattered by hand. Sometimes animals are driven over the fields to press them into the soil. Very advanced, very scientific, definitely not just convenient. By noon, the sun is high and unapologetic. Shadows are short, tempers are shorter. The farmer straightens up, stretching again, spine protesting loudly in ways no one acknowledges. This is normal. Everything hurts. It's fine. Lunch is eaten under minimal shade. Bread again, beer again, maybe fish if the catch was good. Protein is a treat. Meat is rare. The farmer chews slowly. No one eats fast here. Fast eating is suspicious. There's a moment of stillness. Cicadas buzz. The Nile glints. Somewhere far off, a temple wall is being carved with images of gods smiling benevolently. Those gods are not here. They are very busy elsewhere. Afternoon work continues. Maintenance, irrigation channels checked, mud walls repaired where water has been sneaking through like it has opinions. Farming here is less about planting and more about managing water's attitude. As the day stretches on, fatigue settles in deeply. Not dramatic exhaustion, just a quiet heaviness. Arms move slower, thoughts wander. The farmer wonders briefly what life is like for the people who live in stone houses, then decides not to think about it too hard. Comparison is a dangerous hobby. Eventually, the sun begins its slow descent. Relief arrives quietly. Shadows lengthen. The heat loosens its grip. Tools are gathered again. Nothing is left behind. Everything matters too much. The walk home is unhurried. The village comes back into view. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The smell of bread baking again. Always bread. Children run past, barefoot, loud, undefeated by history so far. At home, dinner is prepared. Grain ground, dough kneaded. It's labor, but a familiar one, comforting in a repetitive sort of way. The farmer eats with family. Words are exchanged, not many. Everyone is tired in the same way. As dark falls, oil lamps flicker. Stories might be told, old ones, familiar ones, gods intervening just enough to keep things interesting. The farmer listens, half aware, body sinking into rest. Before sleep, another small prayer. Same requests, same hopes, nothing flashy. The day ends where it began, on a simple bed, muscles aching. Tomorrow will be identical. And that's the point. Because for thousands of years, this quiet, muddy, repetitive day is what kept civilization alive. Not kings, not pyramids, just someone waking up early, trusting a river, and hoping the tax collector stays lost. And with that thought drifting gently away, the night settles in.
The night passes the way nights usually do in ancient Egypt, quiet, warm, and filled with the background noise of insects that have absolutely no concept of personal space. Our farmer sleeps lightly. Everyone does. Roofs are thin. The world feels close. At some point, he wakes briefly, adjusts his position, and immediately regrets having a spine. Then sleep takes him again. Morning returns, not dramatically, just gradually. Pale light seeps into the house, and once again the universe suggests it might be time to exist. The farmer wakes, same routine, same stiffness, same calm acceptance that this is how bodies feel now. Before anything else, there's a glance toward the Nile. You don't ignore the Nile. That's how civilizations end. Today, the water level looks stable, not rising, not falling. Good. Neutral is excellent. Breakfast repeats itself like a ritual that no one bothers calling sacred. Bread, beer, maybe some leftover fish if it survived the night and didn't make any concerning smells. Food here isn't about pleasure, it's about continuity. Calories in, work out. Today's tasks depend entirely on the season. Ancient Egyptian farmers lived by three major agricultural seasons: Akhet, Peret, and Shamu. Flooding, growing, harvest. The Nile sets the schedule. Humans follow along like polite guests. Let's say we're in Peret, the growing season, which sounds hopeful. It is in theory. This is when crops actually get to exist. Wheat, barley, flax. Everything planted earlier is now trying its best. The farmer heads back to the fields, tools over shoulder, feet already dusty. He checks irrigation channels first. These narrow canals guide water from the Nile into the fields. They require constant attention because water, once again, has opinions. Too much and crops drown. Too little and they give up quietly. Mud is scooped, channels cleared, small repairs made with practiced hands. There's no blueprint, just experience, knowledge passed down through generations who survived long enough to complain about it. Nearby, another farmer argues gently with his son about spacing seeds correctly. The son rolls his eyes. This argument is older than writing, possibly older than language itself. As the sun climbs, so does the heat. Linen clings, sweat appears immediately and commits fully. The farmer works anyway. There is no alternative. Days off are a modern concept that would sound deeply suspicious to everyone here. Mid-morning brings a different task: livestock. A few goats, maybe cattle owned collectively by the village. Animals are wealth, food, labor, and responsibility, all wrapped into one occasionally stubborn package. The farmer checks them, makes sure no one has wandered off. They haven't. Goats are many things, but subtle is not one of them. There's also maintenance around the house. Mud brick walls crack easily. Rain is rare, but erosion is constant. Repairs are ongoing. Nothing is ever truly finished. This is a culture built on maintenance, of fields, of buildings, of the illusion that everything is under control. At some point, a scribe appears. This is never anyone's favorite moment. The scribe is educated, clean, wearing better linen, carrying writing materials. He does not do manual labor, and everyone can tell. He approaches with calm authority, friendly, polite, dangerous. He's here to assess, to count crops, to estimate yields, to make notes that will eventually become taxes. The farmer greets him respectfully. Everyone does. Disrespecting a scribe is like disrespecting math. It never ends well. The scribe asks questions. How much land is planted? What crops? Any damage? The farmer answers honestly. Mostly. There's a delicate balance here. Too little and suspicion arises. Too much and taxes increase. This negotiation is subtle and has been refined over centuries. The scribe scribbles, nods, makes a few neutral sounds, then leaves. Everyone exhales collectively. It's not over, it's never over, but it's not happening right now, and that counts as peace. Work resumes. Weeding, always weeding. Plants that were not invited insist on showing up anyway. The farmer pulls them patiently. This is slow work, bent over, hands in dirt, mind wandering. He thinks about gods, not abstractly, practically. Gods here are involved in logistics. Hapi controls the flood. Osiris governs agriculture and rebirth. These gods are busy with crop yields and water levels. Very relevant. There's a small offering made later. Nothing extravagant. A bit of food, a quiet word. The farmer doesn't expect miracles, just consistency. Lunch comes and goes. Same foods, same shade.
Someone mentioned a neighbor who fell ill. That's concerning. Illness is unpredictable. There's no clear understanding of germs, just balance. When balance fails, things get ominous. The afternoon drags, heat peaks, work slows. Everyone moves like they're underwater. There's no rush. Crops grow at their own pace. The farmer adjusts irrigation one more time, checks for pests. Birds are chased away with mild enthusiasm. Eventually, the sun lowers again. Relief arrives slowly. The fields glow softly. It's almost beautiful, not in a poetic way, in a quiet, tolerable way. Back in the village, evening life resumes. Children are washed, animals settled, bread baked again. Always bread. The farmer's wife manages the household with quiet efficiency. This labor is constant and invisible, which history will later be extremely unfair about. Dinner is shared, stories drift. Someone mentions a festival coming up, a day off, sort of. Religious obligations replace farm work, which somehow feels lighter. As darkness settles, lamps are lit. Oil is precious. Light is used carefully. The farmer sits, body finally resting, mind slowing. Sleep arrives again, heavy this time. Tomorrow will bring something similar, or something worse, or something better. There's no way to know. And that's life here, balanced on water levels and grain stores. Calm, repetitive, fragile. Let's keep drifting. Another morning arrives, quietly, without applause. The farmer wakes the way he always does, slowly, carefully, like someone negotiating with joints that have their own legal counsel. The house is dim, cool for now. Outside, the sky is already promising heat later, because it always does. Today feels slightly different. Not better, just different. There's talk of an upcoming festival, which means routine will bend a little, not break, bend. Ancient Egypt loved structure too much to let it fully relax. Breakfast is eaten, once again, with minimal excitement. Bread has now achieved a level of familiarity that borders on emotional neutrality. Beer is consumed. The farmer stretches. He steps outside. The village is more active than usual. People are talking, planning. There's a low-level hum of anticipation. Festivals are important. They honor gods. They reinforce order. They provide sanctioned distraction, which is essential when your entire economy is based on not starving. But before celebration, there is still work, because of course there is. The farmer heads to the fields again. The sun climbs. The rhythm continues. Irrigation channels need checking. Crops need inspection. Farming does not pause politely just because humans would like a day off. There's a moment mid-morning when the farmer stops and looks across the fields, the green shoots, the water glinting in narrow channels. It's a good year so far. Not perfect, but acceptable. In Egypt, acceptable is a victory. Nearby, someone hums softly. Music exists here, simple, rhythmic. It blends into work naturally. No one performs, no one listens. It just fills the space. The farmer joins in, barely audible, not for joy, just to mark time. Eventually, work winds down earlier than usual. The festival approaches. Tools are cleaned, stored. The farmer washes in the river, water cool against skin hardened by sun and labor. Cleanliness matters, especially for religious events, not symbolically, practically. Gods appreciate effort. Clothing is adjusted, linen smoothed. Nothing fancy, just the best version of what he owns, which is still extremely practical. The village gathers near the temple. Temples here are not quiet places. They're busy, smelling of incense, animals, offerings. Priests move with authority. They know the rituals. They know the words. Everyone else follows along, trusting that someone here understands the instructions. The farmer participates, bowing, offering, standing when others stand, sitting when they sit.
He doesn't question it. The gods keep the world running. This is how you stay on their good side. There's food, more than usual. Meat appears, rare, celebrated quietly. No one overdoes it. Indulgence is risky, but satisfaction is allowed. There's dancing, simple, repetitive, more about movement than performance. The farmer watches, maybe joins briefly. His body is tired, but this is a different kind of motion, looser, less purposeful. Laughter happens, not loud, not uncontrolled, just enough to remind everyone they're human. As evening falls, the festival winds down. Gods have been honored, order reaffirmed, life can resume. The farmer walks home under a sky full of stars, no light pollution, just the universe quietly existing overhead. He feels something close to peace, or at least temporary relief from the usual weight. The next day will be normal again. Of course it will. Festivals are pauses, not changes. And normal means work. Morning returns. Same stiffness, same routine. Fields await. But there's a lightness today, the kind that lingers after rest. Brief, appreciated. The farmer notices small things, the way plants lean toward water, the sound of insects, the smell of earth warming. None of this is new, but it feels noticeable today. Midday brings heat. Fatigue returns. The illusion fades. Everything is back where it belongs. There's news from another village. The flood was lower there, crops struggling. That's worrying. The Nile doesn't distribute generosity evenly. Someone always gets less. Everyone hopes it's not them next year. The farmer says nothing. There's nothing to say. Sympathy exists, but solutions do not. Afternoon work slows. The sun lowers. Another day finishes. Another day added to the long, indistinguishable chain of days that make up a lifetime. At home, dinner repeats. Bread, beer, maybe leftovers from the festival. The farmer eats, listens, rests. Sleep comes. And so it goes. Days flowing like the river itself. Calm on the surface, powerful underneath. Let's continue drifting forward.
Morning arrives with a slightly different energy today. Not excitement, nothing that dramatic, just a low hum of awareness. Harvest season is close enough to feel now. The air itself seems to know. Everyone moves with a little more intention, a little more focus. Still calm, but alert. The farmer wakes and immediately checks the sky. Old habit. Clouds are rare here, but when they appear, they matter. The Nile has behaved this year, not overly generous, not cruel. A good flood, the best kind, which means the fields are ready. Breakfast is eaten quietly. Bread, as always. Beer, as always. The children sense the shift, too. They're quieter, or maybe just watching more closely. Harvest is important. Everyone knows this without needing it explained. Tools are gathered, sickles sharpened carefully. Stone blades are checked for cracks. A broken blade mid-harvest is more than an inconvenience, it's a delay, and delays are dangerous. The farmer heads out with others from the village. Harvest is communal. Fields are worked together. Speed matters now. Crops left too long invite birds, pests, and misfortune. Everyone lines up, moving methodically through the fields. The work is repetitive. Bend, cut, gather, tie, stack, over and over. The farmer falls into the rhythm easily. His body knows this motion intimately. Muscles complain, but they cooperate. The sun climbs. Heat settles in quickly. Sweat drips. Linen darkens. No one stops unless they absolutely must. Breaks are short. Water is sipped. Beer is rationed. Efficiency rules the day. There's quiet conversation as they work. Comments about yields. Observations about the grain quality. Someone jokes that the gods were in a good mood this year. Everyone agrees cautiously. Complimenting fate too loudly feels risky. Children help too. carrying bundles, scaring off birds with sticks and shouting. They take the task seriously. This is not play, this is contribution. By midday, the fields look different, emptier, orderly. Grain stacks rise like quiet monuments to effort. The farmer straightens occasionally, stretching his back, blinking sweat from his eyes. Lunch is brief, bread again, of course, a few dates, water. No one lingers. The work resumes quickly. Time matters. As the afternoon drags on, fatigue sets in deeply. This is the hardest part of the year. The farmer's hands ache, his shoulders burn. But there's motivation now, visible progress, tangible reward. By late afternoon, the harvest is mostly complete. There's a quiet sense of relief, not celebration. That comes later. This is the moment where everyone exhales just slightly. The grain is transported back to the village, stored carefully, counted, watched. This is where anxiety shifts forms. Now it's about protection, theft, rot, taxation. Ah, yes, taxes. The scribe returns. Of course he does. He always does. Harvest season is his time to shine. He inspects the grain piles, makes notes, calculates portions owed to the state, the temple, and the people in charge of both. The farmer stands nearby, respectful, neutral. He knows this routine well. Some grain will leave. It always does. The goal is simply to ensure enough remains. The scribe is fair, or at least predictable. That's as good as it gets. Numbers are written, agreements implied. The scribe departs again, taking a portion with him. There's a moment of quiet resentment, not directed at the scribe personally, just at the concept of losing what you worked so hard to grow. But this is the system. It has always been the system. Evening brings exhaustion, the kind that feels earned. The farmer returns slowly. His steps are heavy. His hands tremble slightly. Dinner is better tonight. Fresh grain, maybe meat shared among many. There's satisfaction in the food, real nourishment. The children eat eagerly, the adults eat gratefully. Conversation flows more freely. There's talk of how good the harvest was, comparisons to past years, stories of floods gone wrong. Everyone knows how fragile this success is. After eating, the farmer sits quietly, muscles humming, mind slowing. This is one of the rare times he allows himself to feel something like contentment. Night settles in. The village is quieter than usual. Everyone is tired. Lamps flicker briefly, then go dark. The farmer lies down, body heavy, mind still moving. He thinks about the months ahead, the grain stored, the work to come, the cycles repeating. Harvest is not the end. It's just a pause, a deep breath before the next round of waiting. Sleep comes quickly tonight, earned. And as the Nile flows quietly nearby, carrying silt and stories and the weight of countless identical harvests before this one, the farmer rests.
Hey guys, tonight let's slow everything down a little. Dim the lights, set the volume just low enough that it feels intentional, and let's drift gently back almost 2,000 years to a city that was loud, crowded, slightly unhinged, and absolutely convinced it was the center of the universe. Because tonight we're talking about the Roman Colosseum, not the action version, not the sword-swinging, blood-splattering highlight reel, but the quiet, weird, deeply Roman story behind it. The egos, the stress, the family drama, the architectural flexing, and the many ways this enormous building was less about entertainment and more about imperial coping mechanisms. So get comfortable, because Rome didn't build the Colosseum because it was bored. Rome built it because Rome had issues. And like most large, expensive projects born of emotional instability, it all starts with one man making everyone else uncomfortable. Before the Colosseum, there was Nero. And yes, of course there was.
Nero was the kind of emperor who made people nostalgic for previous emperors while he was still alive, which is not easy to do. He ruled Rome in the mid-1st century, and his hobbies included singing in public, competing in athletic contests he always won for mysterious reasons, and executing people who mildly annoyed him. He also had a habit of taking up space, literal space. After a massive fire tore through Rome in 64 CE, Nero looked at the devastation and thought, "Wow, what a great opportunity for me personally." So he built the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a sprawling palace complex filled with gardens, artificial lakes, rotating dining rooms, and enough gold leaf to make subtlety file for divorce. Where ordinary Romans once lived, Nero installed himself, with ponds and statues and a colossal bronze version of himself casually looming over the city like an insecure screensaver. The people did not love this. And then, shockingly, Nero died, violently, after being declared a public enemy, because, again, of course he did. What followed was a brief but intense period called the Year of the Four Emperors, which is exactly what it sounds like. 4 men tried to run the empire in 1 year. It went about as smoothly as expected. Eventually, one of them stuck. His name was Vespasian, and Vespasian had a problem. Vespasian was not glamorous. He was practical. He was a military man. He was the human equivalent of a sensible shoe. And after a year of civil war, Rome was tired. Tired of chaos. Tired of divas. Tired of emperors treating the city like a personal art project. So Vespasian did something clever, something quietly brilliant. He looked at Nero's absurd private lake sitting right in the middle of Rome and said, "No, we're not doing this anymore." And instead of another palace, he promised the people something else, something public, something generous, something that said, "I am not Nero, please relax." He promised them an amphitheater, a massive one, the biggest Rome had ever seen, and he decided to build it right on top of Nero's lake, which was not subtle at all. This was political therapy through architecture. Construction began around 72 CE. The building we now call the Colosseum was originally called the Flavian Amphitheater, named after Vespasian's family line, because emperors may come and go, but branding is eternal. The scale was outrageous, 4 stories tall, made of travertine stone, tough, brick, and concrete, held together with iron clamps, no mortar, just vibes and engineering confidence. It could hold somewhere between 50 and 65,000 people, which for context is basically a modern football stadium, except everyone was wearing togas and had extremely strong opinions about lions. The design was also weirdly thoughtful. There were numbered entrances, staircases calculated to move crowds efficiently, seating arranged strictly by social class, because Rome loved equality in theory and hierarchy in practice. Senators sat close to the action, women and enslaved people were pushed higher up, and the poorest citizens were placed at the very top, where the sun was hotter and the view was worse. Rome believed in equal opportunity discomfort. And all of this happened while Vespasian quietly reminded everyone that this building was funded by spoils from the Jewish War, which was Rome's way of saying, "This was expensive, but don't worry, we looted for it." Vespasian, however, never saw the Colosseum finished. He died in 79 CE, reportedly making a joke on his deathbed about becoming a god, because Roman emperors loved a bit of self-aware sarcasm right at the end. The project passed to his son, Titus, and Titus had a different energy. Titus was handsome, charismatic, emotionally available by imperial standards, and deeply eager to be liked, which was helpful because Rome had been through a lot. In a very short span of time, Rome experienced the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which buried Pompeii, then a major fire, and then a plague. It was not a strong decade. So when Titus finished the Colosseum in 80 CE, he decided to open it with games. Lots of games. The most games. The opening celebrations reportedly lasted 100 days, which sounds exhausting. The inaugural games were Rome at its most Roman: gladiator contests, animal hunts, public executions framed as mythological reenactments, because nothing says culture than forcing someone to play Orpheus and then immediately die. There were exotic animals brought in from across the empire: lions, tigers, elephants, creatures most Romans had never seen in real life, now sprinting across a sand-covered arena while confused and angry. The Colosseum even featured staged naval battles, at least early on. The arena could be flooded using complex water systems, allowing boats to float around while people pretended this was normal. It did not last, because structurally this was a nightmare. But for a brief moment, Rome said, "What if water, but indoors?" And through all of this, Titus watched, smiling, nodding, trying very hard to be the opposite of Nero. He succeeded. People loved him, which made it extra tragic when he died suddenly after only 2 years as emperor, possibly from illness, possibly from being alive in ancient Rome. Enter Domitian. Domitian was Titus's younger brother, and where Titus was charming, Domitian was not. Domitian was intense, suspicious, paranoid, deeply concerned about being respected, which is usually a bad sign. But Domitian loved building projects, and he loved control, and the Colosseum was perfect for both. Under Domitian, the Colosseum expanded downward, literally. He added the hypogeum, a vast underground network of tunnels, elevators, cages, and pulleys beneath the arena floor. This is where animals were stored. Gladiators waited. Stagehands ran around trying not to get eaten. Trapdoors allowed sudden appearances. A lion could rise dramatically from below. A condemned criminal could discover too late that the floor was optional. It turned the Colosseum into a kind of mechanical nightmare, efficient, impressive, and deeply unsettling. Domitian also increased the number of games, because fear is easier to manage when everyone is distracted. He did not end well. He was assassinated in 96 CE, stabbed by members of his own household, which, again, very Roman. The Senate condemned his memory. Statues were destroyed, names erased, but the Colosseum stayed. And this is where things get interesting, because the Colosseum outlived nearly everyone who built it. Emperors came and went, dynasties collapsed, Christianity rose, gladiatorial games faded, public executions moved elsewhere. By the 5th century, the Colosseum was no longer the beating heart of Roman entertainment. It was too expensive, too impractical, too pagan. But it didn't disappear. Instead, it became awkward. People reused it. Houses were built inside, workshops, storerooms, a church, because why not tuck a chapel into an abandoned mega-arena? Earthquakes damaged it, stone was stolen to build palaces and churches across Rome. The Colosseum became a quarry, a ruin, a very good pile of stone. And through it all, it just stayed there, half standing, half forgotten, watching centuries pass, which is a very Roman ending. And as we float gently away from emperors and bloodstains and into the strange afterlife of this building, where martyrs, myths, and misplaced nostalgia slowly pile up, for now keep in mind something important. The Colosseum—
All right, let's settle back in. Same place, same enormous pile of stone, but now the crowds are thinning. The emperors are less shiny,
And the Colosseum, once the loudest thing in Rome, is starting to experience something it never planned for: irrelevance. Not immediately, of course. Rome never does anything quickly. But slowly, gently, over centuries, the Colosseum began to lose its main purpose, which is what happens when your main business model is violence and the culture starts asking uncomfortable moral questions. By the 3rd and 4th centuries, the Roman Empire was changing, not improving exactly, just shifting. Money was tighter, borders were unstable, emperors were rotating through at an impressive speed, and Christianity was becoming a thing people had to acknowledge. And Christianity, famously, was not super into gladiators. Now, this is where things often get dramatic in other retellings, but we're not doing that. We're gliding. Gladiatorial games did not end overnight. There was no grand announcement, no emperor standing up and saying, "All right, everyone, swords down, moral growth arc complete." Instead, the games just became less frequent, more expensive, more controversial. Some Christian writers complained loudly, others quietly attended anyway, because humans are complicated and hypocrisy is timeless. By the early 5th century, gladiatorial combat was effectively done. The last recorded gladiator games in the Colosseum are usually dated around 404 CE. According to later Christian sources, a monk named Telemachus tried to stop a fight, jumped into the arena, and was killed by the crowd, which is often framed as a heroic turning point, but historically it's fuzzy, possibly embellished, very on-brand for late antique storytelling. Animal hunts, however, stuck around longer, because Rome could give up humans fighting humans, but animals? That took more time. Eventually, though, even that faded, and suddenly the Colosseum had no clear job. Which is when things get strange. Without games, the Colosseum became a massive problem. It was huge, it required maintenance, it took up prime real estate. And Rome, by this point, was no longer the bustling imperial capital it once was. The population shrank, resources were limited, and no one was interested in preserving a monument to a lifestyle they were trying to move past. So the Colosseum was repurposed. Not respectfully, not thoughtfully, just practically. People moved in. Walls went up between arches, rooms appeared where seats once were. The underground spaces became storage, workshops popped up, stables, small homes. Imagine living inside the Colosseum, doing laundry where emperors once sat, cooking dinner next to an ancient stairwell, casually using world-famous ruins as your backyard. No one thought this was weird, it was just stone, old stone. By the early Middle Ages, the Colosseum had fully entered its confusing multi-use structure phase. At various points, it functioned as a residential neighborhood, a fortress, a religious space, a quarry, a symbol people argued about but didn't fully understand. Powerful Roman families claimed parts of it. The Frangipani family turned sections into a fortified stronghold. Because if you're going to build a medieval power base, why not start with an ancient death arena? Earthquakes didn't help. Major quakes in 847 and 1349 caused large sections of the outer wall to collapse. And once stone fell, people noticed how useful it was. Travertine blocks were hauled away to build churches, palaces, bridges. Iron clamps were ripped out, leaving the pockmarked scars you can still see today. The Colosseum wasn't ruined by barbarians, it was dismantled by locals with carts and errands, which feels very Roman. Now, somewhere along the way, the Colosseum acquired a new identity, a quieter one, a more solemn one.
The idea that the Colosseum was a major site of Christian martyrdom became popular much later, centuries later. Historically speaking, Christians were executed in many places in Rome. Some may have died in the Colosseum, but it was not the primary execution site. It just wasn't. But by the medieval period, accuracy mattered less than symbolism, and the Colosseum was already soaked in imagined suffering. So it became sacred. Crosses were installed, chapels appeared, the Pope declared it hallowed ground. Stations of the cross were established inside. The building shifted from former entertainment venue to solemn reminder of human cruelty, which is quite the rebrand. And like all good rebrands, it stuck. By the Renaissance, people started looking at the Colosseum differently again. Atalists sketched it, poets romanticized it, scholars argued about what it once was and what it meant. It became fashionable to admire ruins, to see beauty in decay, to stare at crumbling stone and feel philosophical about time. The Colosseum was perfect for this. Big, broken, dramatic without trying. Plants grew everywhere. Entire ecosystems formed inside the structure. Botanists cataloged hundreds of species growing in its walls, because when maintenance stops, nature shows up enthusiastically. Goats wandered through, tourists wandered through, everyone projected their feelings onto it, and no one quite agreed on what it symbolized anymore. By the early 18th and 19th centuries, preservation finally became a concern. Popes began stabilizing walls instead of removing them. Restoration projects started. The Colosseum shifted from useful ruin to historic treasure, which meant rules. You could no longer just live there, or take stones home, or build a shed in an archway. The Colosseum became an object to be protected, observed, admired, and slowly it became what it is now, a symbol, not gladiators necessarily, but of Rome itself, eternal, imperfect, layered with meanings it never asked for. What's fascinating is how little the Colosseum cares about any of this. It has been a propaganda project, a massacre venue, a neighborhood, a ruin, a religious space, a tourist destination. And through it all, it remains aggressively present. It does not explain itself. It does not clarify myths. It just exists, letting each generation decide what it wants to see, which might be its most Roman quality of all. And as we let our thoughts drift through empty arches and quiet corridors, imagine the silence. No crowds, no animals, no emperors posturing, just wind, stone, time doing what it always does. In the next stretch, we'll wander through the people who worked here, not the famous ones, the forgotten ones, the stagehands, cleaners, fighters, and functionaries who made the whole thing run. Because the Colosseum wasn't powered by glory, it was powered by labor. And their stories are strange, quiet, and deeply human. So stay settled, we're not going anywhere fast.